Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Jessica Martin. She is a visionary leader, human strategist on a mission to blend neuroscience and ancient wisdom to dismantle societal constraints and change organizations. And in this conversation, we'll learn from her insider strategies for building healthier corporate cultures, improving retention, and creating real wellness impact. Welcome to the show, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me, AJ. I'm excited to be here.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about beating burnout, especially in high-level executives. We'll talk about all this. But before that, let's learn a bit about your journey, your background. So, and also about your recent visit to the Mahakumbh Mela in India. Let's learn about that so that people know who they are listening to.
Okay, sounds good. Well, in my American world, I started out, this whole journey really started out with just being in a very high stress corporate environment. I'd been all the way to executive in the corporate American environment, and it hit me. I was burnt out. I had chronic illnesses, which I thought I could overcome, and I couldn't. And then it led into cancer. And then I ended up getting an amazing rheumatologist who sat me down and said, we've tried everything. The reality is you have a mind, body, spirit disconnect. And until you fix that, you will continue in this spiral. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's no more medicine. But it was a realization in that moment when she talked to me about really what had gone on in my life and how I had been ignoring a lot of me and my authenticity because we get into this societal constraint and this box that we have to fit in. And it's like, I have to do this, I have to do that. And you lose yourself. And it happens not just to executives, it happens to all of us. I ended up starting my whole practice and everything I do around this because what I ended up finding is a lot of people are always pointing fingers at executives. It's their fault. They need to fix it. And it's like, well, hold on a second. They're challenged too. Like there's a lot going on. And there's even more so sometimes going on with executives and this balance and fighting burnout than there is from other employees potentially, right? But there's definitely significant areas that are specific to executives that they have to overcome more so. And so it led me down this whole path I'm on from like all these educations in psychology, consciousness, studying religions, the physiology, the psychology of humanity. And I sat back and looked and I was like, well, the society is built on corporates. And so what not better to just go in and help the corporations transform their executives and their entire culture so that we're not coming up against this burnout anymore. So that's how it all started. That's some of the background.
Absolutely. That's how it all started. So, in terms of burnout, especially for senior level executives, means I thought they are responsible people. What makes them irresponsible about themselves? Help us understand why do they face this burnout when they have got this whole army of people around them to do their work. Financially, also they are well off because they get good money because of their positions. Help us understand then how does this burnout creep into such a high level life?
It's a really good question, actually. I think for most of them, it sneaks up on them. It did on me. And you just think, oh, I'm having a bad day. Oh, tomorrow will be better. Next quarter will be better. Next year will be better, right? And you're responsible not only for whatever is in your personal life, right? family, home, all these things. But now you're also responsible for all these other humans at work, making sure that you're profitable, making sure that everyone's happy and got direction. You're curating massive amounts of people when you're an executive. And so when you're looking at their type of stress, it's different because, and the reason it's different is because the responsibility level, right? Even me, like as a business owner, I have people I have to make sure that they get paid. And I have aspirations to help them meet their goals and their objectives with their careers and what have you in life. And so because of that, you're carrying on like multiple families. And so when you think about, you mentioned, you insinuated that because they have resources and all, with people and finances, that they shouldn't have this problem. It's not a responsibility problem. It's the massive amount of responsibility that they are capable of taking on that makes them often put themselves last.
Absolutely. Now, I will agree with you, but let's see, a lot of people will not agree this, Jessica, because you see, leadership is in crisis. Great resignation, quiet quitting, revenge quitting, all these things are very much on. And toxic leadership, toxic workplaces, therapists in workplaces. Amongst this, a lot of leadership has been coming into question. So
Yeah.
how, and these are not small organizations, big organizations. People have been venting out in social media. Employees don't want to. Now they have brought bots into the system to vet resumes and all that. So
Yeah.
how should people think? Should we think that many of these leaders who are, because they also talk about imposter syndrome, every problem they talk about, except, the real problems that need to be solved. So should we understand that these are inefficient people, that leadership has been thrust on them, that they have got only big management degrees, and that it does not work on the ground, that they need to learn something much more basic about human behavior, human minds, about employee welfare, not just about, bottom lines and top lines and about their bank balance and bonuses. How would you like to respond to this thinking?
This is so true. It's so true because you go into these, especially like to your point, these very large corporations, and they're all about profit. And the problem is they think, I shouldn't say they all do, but some of them think that people can go into these situations and they can get replaced by AI. They can get replaced by somebody else. And none of this is true. The culture of corporations has been lost. And the reason the culture of corporations has been lost is, to your point, it's just all about the profit, making the board happy, making the profits come through. And then what ends up happening is everybody's doing that. And when everyone's doing that, you do lose connection with humanity. So what we're seeing now is something that happened generations ago. So 2 generations ago, we started introducing a different mindset, a different knowledge base into the corporations and the corporations we have now today. And so for a while, everybody was rolling out all this training on like different generations and what have you. It's not that we don't want to get stuck on the generational gaps. The reality is these generations that have come into leadership, most of them have not received training. They have not received experience, because to your point, you also brought up they have these educations and then they come in. The human brain and the human memory, our muscle memory, our brain memory, our bio memory, all of that comes from experience. So when we are looking at some of the trainings that these future leaders and current leaders are getting, they're not getting experiential training. And so they have nothing to reference from, because we base all of our decisions off of the experience, and experience creates emotion.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Jessica. If you have completed, there was a bit of a freeze. If you have completed, then I'll speak.
I have completed.
Okay. Okay, Jessica. Let's examine this way. It's not about just the C-suites, because they have still some support system. What about the employees? Can these people who cannot take care of themselves Will they be able to take care of the employees they lead? If they cannot understand their own problems, can they be expected to understand the problems of the employees that they lead? If they cannot stop themselves from burnout, so called burnout, can they expect to understand that their employees are also facing the same problem? Because these are all the top people, and employees are looking at much, much better, bigger things than just pure bank balance and bottom line. They also need work life balance, they also need other things in life. How should we look at that? Are leaders not only being selfish, not only being inefficient in that sense, or not aware of their own things, but they're also being selfish by not taking care of themselves because they have to take care of the employees whom are so dependent on every decision that they make? How would you like to look at this, examine this from this angle?
Yeah, this is a great point too. I love this. So with the when we're looking at our leaders and our executives, they're selfless, right? Especially when we're looking at ones that have achieved like what I would call like that legacy leadership, where people want to follow them and they have left a mark long after they have left. And that's a positive mark. And that's because they have already figured out on their own how to master all of this. But the thing is with these newer generations of leaders, we're not seeing that. And that's why the companies are struggling. And so I would say that they're selfless in the fact that they just sacrifice everything because they've never gone and had any training that's their own empowerment. And that's a societal thing. That's where we're seeing burnout with our employees. I have a whole class of people who are just burnout on life. It has nothing to do with career, business. They're just burnout on life, looking for direction. And that is that mind, body, spirit disconnect, right? And so when we're looking at this, we have to identify our core values. We have to enforce our boundaries and identify them so that we can enforce them. We have to learn our body types so that we can live with the right type of care for our own bodies. And then on top of that, we have to learn our communication style. And then we have to start every day with a practice that is focused on us setting the day right. When we do that, then we've poured into ourselves and then we can pour into others. And we don't end up having these challenges of burnout. And one other thing, too, that you mentioned is brought up a lot. One of the reasons why executives have such a hard time with burnout is because they're not allowed to ask for help because they hear things like what you're saying. And so they're like, I can't be burnt out. I have to take care of my employees who are burnt out. I can't admit that I'm struggling because I'm up here. And if I do, what will my employees think? What will my peers think? Will I lose my contract, my agreement, right? Because they all have a different employment agreement than we do. And like I shouldn't say we, but employees. I can't say we anymore. But they have different contracts, and so when you're looking at all of those things, it's harder for them to say that they're failing because that's what it is to them.
Absolutely, absolutely, Jessica. Let the leaders, let the organizations think about this. People like you are there to give suggestions, give a lot of understanding about these things. So let's look at from that perspective. Let's look at things a bit more kindly towards some of these leaders who are really great leaders, but are still struggling with this thing called burnout. So is it that a lot of these people ignore it or do not understand it because they are unseen signs and they miss it? How do you like to tell about these unseen signs of burnout that leaders can miss?
It's very easy to miss because you think they're already used to being under so much stress that when it starts tipping is the problem. And so normal stress triggers that we all will experience of like sleep challenges, having a bad diet, just anxiety, memory, all those things are they're considered acceptable in society. You're just stressed. Just accept it. Get stronger, right? So that's how it creeps in. And when you realize you're burnt out is when you start waking up and more times than not during the week, you're exhausted. You don't have the joy of going in. You don't want to, you kind of get disengaged. And when you start getting disengaged, you get jaded, things don't matter. And then it starts to spiral from there. And so if you're working 5 days a week and 3 of those days, you're loathing getting up, or your heart rate is already through the roof before you even arrive, those are pretty good signs that you are in burnout, whereas those other signs are building up to it.
Absolutely. So let's understand it. Is there a social stigma around burnout? Forget about top leaders. Even general employees, they don't want to go. And if I understand correctly, that I'm feeling burnout, either because they feel that organization will look at it them negatively, people will look at them negatively, or because expectations from society or even from the home front can be much beyond what we understand, and that's why they don't. But what about leaders? They have a, as I said, they can have access to the best of people, even medical help. Why is it that they are not able to, once they know that I'm feeling exhausted and I'm not able to control my routine, why is it that they don't do it? Is it again because of social stigma, or is it because it just they think about, I'll do it tomorrow?
Well, what resources do they have? They don't. I mean, when you look at specifically narrowing in on burnout for executives, it doesn't exist, right? And that's why we started our program, because you're right. It is employees, and employees have the stigma too, especially when they're high performers. They also won't want to admit it. They don't want that on their record. And when you look at it from a medical condition, depending on what country you're in, it is, well, I shouldn't say depending, because the WHO has already said that, yeah, burnout exists, but it's not a medical condition. And at the same, so you can't do anything about it. You can't take a leave from work. A vacation doesn't fix it. It's a journey you have to go through. And so when you're looking at each individual, you've got the stigma, they have to accept it themselves as an individual. And then how do they take time for it? Right? Because a lot of places where it's like intense, you're having to step away from work. And that's not possible, not in today's society. And so, like in our program, what we do is we just have little modules, right? And little live meetings where we come together, and trainings and courses. And we really go and take people through the journey piece by piece, because there's not time to say, hey, I need you to take 3 months off. How about over those 3 months, let's just take an hour a week, and you can still achieve it. So it's just having the resources and knowing where they are. And a lot of corporations don't offer this. They offer evergreen training, like where you're just watching video modules and you check the box and you're done. Now you know what that is. Good. Moving on. You don't have it. It's fine. And so when you're looking at the way that corporations are trying to automate their training, that's also part of the cultural problem and a part of burnout.
Absolutely. And when we talk of corporate culture, corporate wellness, how should we understand? Is corporate wellness programs, our organizational wellness programs, working or not working? Should we consider that they are failing in a larger aspect? Only some, knee-jerk reactions are there, but beyond. Who's responsible? Is it the human resource department that is responsible for this? And I'm curious to understand, do human resource people also face burnout? Have you heard of CHROs facing burnout? Help us understand from that dynamics. Or is it the lesser mortals, employees from other departments will face burnout?
Oh yes, they do face burnout. And depending on how the company is structured, depends on if it is human resources. It might not be. It might be learning and development. It might be it could be the human resources. It could just, there's a wellness director in some, or VP in some companies. So it just depends on how the company is structured. It could be a lot of different people. But when you're looking at all of the pieces of this, anybody can experience burnout. The way you tackle it is different because your experiences are different. And so when you're looking at the corporate culture and how they're trying to combat burnout, combat the toxic cultures, and they're trying to go after these things, a lot of times we're just seeing evergreen stuff. And that's the funny thing is there aren't statistics on it yet because it's still relatively new. But from working with a lot of companies, I know it's not working because then I have to come in and then I do my talks, I do the coaching and the individual and the group and walk them through the exercises so they have the experiences. And then what ends up happening is employees become much happier. And then in addition to it, all the leaders become much happier, and it gets embedded into the leadership training so that as people are being cultivated through the corporations into their leadership, not only are they bringing the company culture, that new one or the one that they want to re-resurrect and get rid of the toxic, but in addition to that, they're bringing that in as a leader, and so they've got the tools and resources to help with it.
Absolutely, absolutely, Jessica. So I want to understand, what is the solution? What is the solution for this? Are there, in a nutshell, if you can say, okay, these are the things you do and you will not face burnout. When do a person like you come into the picture? Should you come at the beginning of all this planning and organizational wellness, or should it be when somebody falls down on the floor and because of burnout?
Well, it's usually the latter. But it depending on the company, I mean, what would be great is if it was just built in, right? It's part of the what we do here, and it's part of the culture. Is this is how we care about you, because when you're teaching people, and that's what it boils down to, it's teaching. Because in society, we don't teach this anymore. These are things that generations ago got washed out because there's no test for it, right? But the reality is having our core values, and this is again back to we're working in societal constraints, and as society has evolved, we've lost our core values, we've lost our own identities and our boundaries, we've lost the ability to understand our bodies, our communication styles, our learning styles, like all of these things, they're lost now. And people haven't learned them for generations. So parents aren't passing them down to their children. Teachers aren't passing them down to their students. And then you get into corporate America, and we're in a position where we have to raise people. And that's what I said 20 years ago, is I said, we are getting in a situation where we are going to be raising our employees because nobody else is doing it. And here we are suffering the consequences of raising our employees. And at the same time, as a human being, it is our innate gift, ability, and right to know all these things about ourselves so that we can be happy. Because not everybody wants to be a leader. Not everybody wants to be a widget. Everybody belongs where they belong. That makes them happy.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is much to learn about all these things from you, Jessica, and I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of organizations would want to connect with you, learn more from you, about the programs that you do. What is the best way for them to connect with you, Jessica?
Oh, so many ways. You can on LinkedIn at Bliss Out Mentor, or you can go to our website, blissoutmentor.com. That's the easiest.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.